Hey everyone, it's Daphne from Scrap and Create. We're working on Woodland Friends, and this is page 7, which is just like page 2 if you've already built ahead, or if you started building in the sequence that that the book was put together in. So it's going to be the same. So we've got 3 flaps. We've got a top-down flap that's going to hold the 2 door flaps secure. So the top-down flap, I'm going to come back to that because I'm going to actually do that one with you. On page 1 or page 2, I had already had it trimmed out. So I'm going to show you how I did that. So this is 9 7/8. So it's just under 10 inches, 9 7/8 by 8. You're going to score it 1/2 inch and 5 1/4. And let me double check that. Yes. And you're going to do that 2 times. We are going to have a left and right door flap. And they're going to get installed just like this right on the edge of the pocket page. So let's go ahead and do that. Okay. Okay. There we go. Okay, we're definitely going to install our top flap here. This is the top of the page. So that is this flap. It needs some tape. I'm going to give you the measurements. It's 3 3 3/4 by 8. And you're going to score it at 1/2 inch and 5/8. 1/2 inch and 5/8. I don't do this very often. It's a pretty common technique. I just don't do it very often because I don't make my pages necessarily that bulky. But because we've got a flap that's folded over on itself, that makes this pretty bulky. And then once we add designer paper to the insides and outsides, it's going to rise quite a bit. So I went ahead and did this gusset. I'm going to bring that up and show it to you. So we've scored at 1/2 inch right here and then 5/8. So we're going to have a small gusset. This is going to get installed like so. Before we install it, I am going to cut a diagonal on the bottom so this looks like a banner. So I've already marked it on this side, and I'll show you what I did. I found my midpoint, and then I went to the 1 inch rise from the bottom, and then I just drew a straight line across to the midpoint. And then we're going to trim this. You can either put it in your trimmer and trim it or use your hand scissors to cut it. For the page 2, I had already done the trimming, so you guys saw the finished product, but I wanted to show you how I did this. So I am going to double check. There's my midpoint, and I'm right on. And then this should be 1 inch from the bottom. 1 inch. And 1 inch. And then I just drew from that dot to the center on both sides. I'm just going to use a pair of scissors to hand trim this. There we go. And then I'm going to use my kneaded eraser to take off any pencil marks that I left behind. It's just slight. It will be exposed because this is going to be matted, right? Okay, so that's done. So then the next thing we need to do is trim out a piece of paper, well, to go over this. And you should do this before you install it. Once you install this, it's really hard to measure out your paper. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to line this up so that my mat is right where I want it on the left and right hand side. And that looks pretty good. And then I'm going to carefully pick it up, holding it in place, flip it over, and I'm going to trace. I'm going to try to trace. There we go. And now I've got my pattern for the flip side. So I'm going to use my scissors and trim that again. And again, you can do this install, but man, it's a lot easier if you wait and install the flap after you've cut your designer paper. Okay. Now let's see how we did. Okay, that looks really good. Now the last thing I need to do is just trim the height of this. So I'm going to put a little tick mark on either side on where I need to trim. Okay, now I'm just going to trim this off, and that should be just right. So let's lay it in. So once I fold this over and we see the actual length of the, there we go. So that's how I did that. So we collectively need to do that one more time for the flip side. Now for the flip side, you don't really need to try to line it up on here. You can use this as your template. I don't know what I'm going to put on the flip side yet, so I'm not ready to glue this down, but I am ready to go ahead and add it to the page. Let me get this out of the way. So we are ready to add this here. So I found my midpoint on this page. Now I need to find the midpoint on this flap. And it is 1 7/8, 1 7/8 from off center is where your center line is. So it's 1 7/8 that way. So just under 2 inches. Now I'm going to line up those 2 dots. And we're going to install this flap. And as usual, I like to bring the edge to me instead of trying to lean over, for a couple reasons. One, I personally find it easier to move the paper than myself. And secondly, if I did it the other way, all you guys would see is the top of my head. And I don't find that to be very helpful. That my head sneaks in there often enough. Okay. All right, there we go. And now we got that little bit of a gusset. Okay, so that is done. Now, we're going to need some magnets here and here to hold everything in place. And I used 2 sets on page 2, and I'm going to use 2 sets on page 7. So I'm going to close it, and we're going to take a look visually about where we want this to land. So think about right there. So I'm going to want my magnet about right there. So I'm going to go ahead and lay these in, and I'm putting the one on the back side just to hold it all in place until we figure out where they're going to go. And I didn't do this on the last one. I just taped them into place, and I think this might actually be more helpful. Okay. Push them down a little bit more. Okay, that looks good. So now these are in place, and because I use these on the flip side, these are going to be held in place until I tape them down. Okay. Now I can take these magnets, and we're going to locate them on the panels. Okay, and I'm using my tape to soften the edges. I really recommend you doing this. Unfortunately, the magnet edges are not beveled. I wish they were, but they're not. So this will really soften the edges. And you don't have to use double-sided tape, but any kind of tape to soften the edge. You could even use some masking tape. But I always have the double-sided tape handy, so that's what I use. Okay, before you press it all into place, make sure that your gusset is vertical. If you're pulling it too far forward, you're kind of losing the benefit of the gusset. So it should naturally want to fall that way, but you might want to check it before you press these magnets into place. That's all good. Okay, now I'm going to set this aside. So we are using the ephemera card with the squirrel on it. Now, when you have your ephemera cards, and I mentioned this in page 2, there's usually like a little dark edge around it that makes them not quite 4x6 matted. So I trim that off, and then what happens is it fits perfectly on a 4x6 frame for me because I want a 1/16 inch border. So I just go ahead and trim that off and then ink my edges and lay it down. Okay, let me double check my measurements. We're going to go ahead and get these matted. I'm slightly off a little bit, so that should be good. So we're going to go ahead and mat these. We're going to do the top side for one and the back side for the other. And the ephemera cards in this collection, the back sides are so pretty. And oh my gosh, the new Blossom collection that's coming out. I was looking at the ephemera cards online for the Blossom collection that's coming, which is beautiful. I can't wait to get my hands on it. And you know what? I think I'm going to trim this down just a little bit more. After I get it glued down, I'm going to take a sliver off the edge because it's too much border. At any rate, what I was saying is the Blossom collection, the ephemera cards, the flip side of the ephemera cards are almost as pretty as the top side. So it's really, really a fun, beautiful collection. I love florals anyway. And honestly, I don't think I've ever seen a graphic collection that I don't like. There's some I like better than others, but I like them all. Okay, now let's see how this one is. I might need to, yeah, this needs to be trimmed down just a little bit too. Ugh. So this is where it gets tricky because you want these two cards to be exactly the same size because they're going to back against each other. So I think I'm going to use it to help me mark where to trim. Okay, that's one edge. There we go. Okay, now this one is going to be the back side, which is very pretty too. I like the blues. It's hard to cover up the fronts, but luckily you get two of each. Okay, that is lovely. Okay, now we are ready to go ahead and install our large flap coverings, which I've chosen. This is actually the signature page, and it's hard to cover up, but we're going to, because I think this is just too busy. So we're going to use the plaid side. And by the way, I'm using the signature page on the cover. So set that aside if you haven't already. Okay, there we go. All right, so I did choose the green for the outside, so I need to pick something for the inside. And I think I'm going to use this squirrel pattern, which is the flip side of the squirrel. Let me think about that. Let me see what else I have from, I definitely want blue or green, right? Let me get my patterns and solids. Yeah, so I can use a solid blue. Well, yeah, so this is the other blue, and I think that's just way too much. We can probably use this on the inside somewhere once we get this out of our field of vision, but I think plaid is too much, so we're gonna go with the squirrel. Okay, so I'm gonna trim this down to, let's see, it's 12 inches now. I think I need, let's see, let's do 7.5. Save that scrap, and then this is 3 5/8. Okay, so that's 7.5 by 3 3/8, and now I'm just going to use the tip of this to trim out the squirrels. Now keep in mind that when you open it, this is going to be the right side, so make sure you lay your squirrels down the right direction and trim the point in the right direction. Okay, so like I was saying, make sure you've got, when you trace it out, make sure you're thinking about the orientation. So when you flip it up, you want your pattern to be going the right way. So now that these are the same width, I'm just going to line them up. And on the flip side, I'm going to draw a line, and we're just going to hand trim it. And then I'm actually going to go this way. There we go. And then we'll probably still need to actually fit the height. So once I get my point in, then I'll come back and cut off whatever I need to on the end. So let's do it. Okay, that's not a very sharp point, but it probably will do. Okay, now I'm going to lay this in and figure out where the edge is. That was my son leaving. So let's put a little mark on either side. Trim that off, and it should fit perfect. Okay, let's test it. How did we do? It looks great. So both of these need to be inked. Ooh, I need a manicure. I used to get my nails done because I think the gel lasts so much longer, and I'm so rough on my hands with crafting. The stuff that you buy over the counter just doesn't stay on. But like everybody, you know, your plans change with COVID, right? So no haircuts, no manicures, no movies. I miss going to the movies. That was one of my things with my husband. We really liked going to the movies. So when it finally opens, I guess there'll be lots to see. Okay. So we're going to use the green on top. I just like that contrast. It's a stronger contrast. So we're going to use the green on top. We're inked. We're ready to go. This one's a little hard to get on because it wants to shift on the page, so it might be easier to open it up. There we go. Okay, now we're ready to do this side. I'm going to turn it all around, get my tape off. And I run over this with my pick tool just because when I lift the backing, I don't want the tape to come. You can use a score tool. I know I'm going to pick this up anyway, so. There we go. Making progress. Okay, this needs to go here, and we're going to take a couple of magnets and we're going to lay them down so we can see where our magnets are. And then I am going to, that looks pretty good. I think that's where I'm going to put it. I'm going to get my Tim Holtz ruler out, make sure it is centered, or not centered, but straight. Wow, that doesn't look straight to me. Yes, it does. Okay, the pencil line is so light, it's hard for me to see it. Okay, so that's going to be the inside. So we need to find the center. There's my center line. And then this should be, I'll double check. 1 7/8. 1 7/8. And all I'm doing here is marking so I know that my glue needs to be inside those lines. I'm double checking. It looks good. Okay. Okay. Okay, we don't need these anymore. And again, we're just trying to make sure we didn't cover up our magnets. Not so much on this side, but on the flip side, because that would be a lot of paper to go through. Okay, now we can go ahead and make sure you've got your orientation correct so that when the flap is open, the pattern is right side up. There we go, lovely. And because we've matted these ephemera cards individually and then put them together, this feels nice and rigid. I like it. Okay, I've got to do some trim and ink work here. So I'm going to take a break, and when we get back, we will work on the B side. And again, we're on page 7. Thanks everybody for tuning in. I'll be back soon. Hey everyone, it's Daphne from Scrap and Create. And we're on page 7. I had to double check because I'm building it out of order and I keep getting mixed up. So this is page 7. Okay. And this is what I had planned. And then this opens one more time. And this is what I believe I have planned. Okay, I'm trying to decide which I like better, this or this. And I like both, so let me think about that for a second. I'm just trying to clear a little space. I think I'll go that direction. So I'm going to go ahead and close this side and pull everything a little closer to me. I'm going to set the center aside. I'm going to decorate the flaps first. Okay. Oh, is that going to work? You know what? I just made my decision because the blue panel doesn't fit here. It's not quite wide enough. Oh, I can't get it together. Okay, we're on the B side for page 7. Is that right? I have to double check. Yes, page 7. Page 7. Okay, so this is the layout. So we're going to have the plaids out here. And then, so let me tell you what's going on. The plaid is from the 12 by 12 collection pack, or from the Patterns and Solids. And then the squirrel patterns is from the 12 by 12 collection pack. And then I'm going to use these blue ones also, and they are also from the 12 by 12. They're going to go on the outside. So we're going to start, I'm going to shift this over, and we're going to set aside the centerpiece for now. And let's go ahead and get these large pieces into place. It looks like I need to do a little bit of trimming. Let's see how we did. And I just made a mistake. I should have trimmed it off this side because it's a continuing pattern. That wasn't very smart. It's not that way, it's this way. Okay, so now there's a little piece of the bird that's missing, but I'll make sure not to do that on the other side. Okay, so we need to trim this down a little bit. Make sure I take it off the right side, the correct side. Okay. Okay, that looks good. You know what? I told you this was the 12 by 12, but it is not. It is the 8 by 8 collection pack. I can see that by the scale size here. Sorry about that. So the inside is 8 by 8. I know. Hey, babe. What? Okay. Now these are going to go in like this, and then I've got this brown that's going to go down the center. And the brown is already trimmed, so I'm going to put it down first, and then I'll add the other two sides. And basically this strip, I made it the same width as the top down panel. So it's the same width as this designer paper. And it just helps break up. This is a very large space. So doing some color blocking helps break things up a little bit. Okay. Okay, so I'm trying to line it up with this pattern right here so that this is a continuous line as we come down. That is the goal. Okay, and now we can add these two pieces. And they do need to be trimmed down. Now that I've got this in place, I can do that. And try to remember you're going to trim from the inside edges so that this is a continuous pattern across the hinge. Let's see how we did. Okay, looks good. Oh, I know, honey. What is it? Just a minute. All right, I think I have to take a little break here, see what Nala needs. She might be hungry. Okay, and then when we come back, we'll get this one trimmed out and laid down. Be right back. Okay, I'm back. I had to take a quick break and feed my dog. She was kind of hungry, I guess. And now she's resting, so I can get busy and finish this page. So the squirrel pattern is from the 8x8. I mentioned that before, but I just want to mention it again because I misspoke earlier. So this is from the 8x8. And then I just want to share with you again how I decided to do this color blocking. So basically this strip right here is the same width as this paper. So that's where I came up with that dimension. And if memory serves me, it is 3 5/8 inch wide, and then everything else is just sort of measured off of that. So this one covers the whole panel, And then this one's going to cover a whole panel. But the center piece is where the color blocking is. Okay, so let's close this and this, and let's scoot this over. And now we're going to add this last piece. Sorry, guys. It is that time when everybody's walking their dogs, so that Nolly gets on high alert. Okay, that's in. So I'm going to close it. And we'll shift it over, and we'll do the same thing on this side. I was just double checking to make sure I inked it. Looks like I did. Okay. So there is our inside spread. Okay, and we still need two more pieces of paper. And this is what I had trimmed out, so let's see if it's going to work for us. I think they were going to be a little shy. Nope, that's going to be perfect. Okay, so I just need to decide if I want the light side up or the dark side. Light side and dark side, but I think, sorry about that. My dog is busy. I like this, but I'm not sure I like the way it flows with this, so that's where I'm struggling. So the other thing we could do is we could split this in half. I don't like that. So we're going to go with, this would be the other option, is to put a blue banner. I don't care for that either. I just don't like the way these flow together. So we're going to go with the solid blue. It's ready to go. Did I forget to hit enter? I'm not sure I was recording. I hope I was. My camera turned on me. Okay, let's go over it real quick. Okay, so we've got our top panel. It opens up. Then we've got flaps to the left and right. And that is page 7. So Sorry about that. I've got a bunch of papers floating around. So that's page 7. That I had lined up my papers for page 8 behind it. So that's it for now. I'll be back soon with another page.